I've done a bunch of videos about JRPGs that surpassed my expectations, but what about the ones that failed them? Now, don't worry, most of these games are still decent, it's just I was expecting a whole lot more, so let's begin! Number 10, Breath of Fire 2. Let me give you some examples of JRPGs that failed my expectations so you can understand this video better. You've probably seen me criticizing them many times in the past. Resonance of Fate, The Last Remnant, Valkyrie Profile Covenant of the Plume, and most notoriously the very first Persona. That one definitely hurt. So now that I've mentioned those, I won't be covering them in this video, yeah! I first met the Breath of Fire series with the powerful 4th entry on the PS1. I loved that game and it made me look back at the others, so I wanted to start from the very beginning. The first game, while outdated nowadays and full of problems, I greatly enjoyed it. I declared myself a fan of the series, so I couldn't wait to start the sequel, which had way more fans than 1 and 4. When I did, I guess I was burned out from the first one, since I jumped straight into this one. Too much backtracking, too much random encounters, where the heck do I go? Plus, this one was much harder than its predecessor. I gave up and went back last year to try it out on Switch Online one last time. You know what? I was enjoying it this time. It turns out that long break have helped me a lot, so imagine my expectations for this second chance. Only to fail hard once again precisely because of the things that I mentioned. Eventually the difficulty, the encounter rate, and especially the backtracking wore me out, so I gave up this time for good. This isn't a bad JRPG, I admit that now, after so many years. It's got some great things to it, like its story, its combat, and especially its music. But I think it aged horribly and I just can't get into it. Number 9, Neo: The World Ends With You. I think this one is on many of you. You know I'm not a fan of the original game on the DS, and no, I never tried its allegedly bad port on the Switch, so when I saw this sequel was announced, I didn't care for it. That is until many of you brought it up, saying it was different, asking me to give it a chance, that I would really like it. I guess some of you said that because of the music, some really badass themes are there, I admit that, but they keep playing over and over and over again. During the first couple of hours, those themes are all you hear and they get overwhelming. We'll see another example of this later in the video. The combat, sure, you were also right. It was much better and enjoyable for me than the first one. However, I have to say that despite having some unique ideas, it was just nothing special. The graphics were cool, but the atmosphere itself was what kinda ruined it for me. I think it's a game with no identity, trying to be so many styles at the same time. It makes me cringe. You know what, maybe it represents the current generation though, stealing so many things from different social styles, trying desperately to create their own and failing hard to do so. That's the best way I can describe this game. Number 8, Dark Rose Valkyrie. I think some of you were waiting for this moment. Well, here it is, finally. Many years ago, I recommended this turn-based RPG from Compile Hard in a few videos. I even stood up for it on some occasions. You have no idea how much I regret that. You were right, this game is bad. It isn't terrible, but it's bad. Problem is, it starts off pretty good. With a soldier getting promoted to captain in charge of a bunch of military students, they get sent to missions to fight off some monsters that get tougher during the night. I guess what got me into it was its dark themes, something unusual in a lot of Compile Hard JRPGs. And the story, while comedic, also had some interesting twists to it. Sure, it's a harem with a classic bonding mechanic with the girls, but that was to be expected. Speaking about expectations, I had them high for this game because it had received nothing but mixed or negative reviews, and I wanted to defend it. I also remember seeing a lot of you trashing it. After going back to it a few years ago, I finally realized why, and now I'm here to swallow my words. It's repetitive as hell. You get sent to these really cryptic areas, sometimes long, with terrible design. No, they aren't exactly puzzles. It's not like you're supposed to try to find a way to your destination. No, I think the developers messed up and the area or dungeon design turned out to be very problematic. You get lost all the time and get into annoying battles over and over again since enemies are often hard to avoid. That's the one thing that kills what could have been a true hidden gem. It just ruins it. I guess the icing on the cake is its stupidly brutal difficulty spikes that make absolutely no sense at all. I apologize for recommending this game in the past, everyone. I'm sorry. Number 7, Maglam Lord. This game is alright. So for this one I still invite you to try it out and decide for yourself, but it feels like a generic action RPG with a low budget and dumb story. I had high expectations of it because some of the same developers who worked on Summon Knight's Warcraft story on the GBA, which I'm a fan of, did this one. It was supposed to be a spiritual successor to those, so when I watched the trailer, I got excited. The combat looked really cool, and you know what? It is! That didn't disappoint me. You have a weapon triangle system, so you switch between weapons during battle and instantly to attack the enemies weak to them. It's in 2D, it's responsive, enjoyable and satisfying, beating the crap out of your enemies. But let me tell you the things that failed my expectations. First, I thought you'd play as the badass Demon Lord, but you can only control their allies. Sure, once the burst meter or whatever fills up, you can summon the protagonist, overpowered, but it's only for a bit and the meter needs to slowly start filling up in and out of battle again. Since your choices affect your personality and relationship with the characters, I thought dialogue would be more fun. I knew it would be a comedy, but most of the writing is kinda lame. Often it tries to take itself seriously, rendering the plot boring, and some of the comedic responses aren't even funny. I really wanted my Demon Lord to be a complete evil jackass, but for some reason I couldn't. So like I said at the beginning, the game's still good, but I was just expecting a lot more from it. Number 6, Sword Art Online, Hollow Fragment. I'm a big dot hack fan and you know it. Sword Art Online, despite being also a Bandai Namco IP, is nothing but a ripoff of it. Real life people trapped inside their characters in the MMORPG. I don't know why they decided to recycle that same plot when it had already been genius in the hack series, but hey, ripoffs can also be great sometimes, right? So I never cared about the anime after watching 2 or 3 episodes, but the games were a different story. For the sake of the channel and only to have more variety of games to talk about, I want to try them out. So I started with the very first one on PSP, but it never came out of Japan. A remake though was done on the PS Vita under the subtitle Hollow Fragment, which is also on PS4 and Windows. I got excited because I watched gameplay footage of it and it looked fantastic. The combat seemed very unique. You move around the enemies, but your character attacks by himself, performing attacks or combos depending on what you click with the buttons. Skills need skill points to be activated after a cooldown. One ally can aid you in battle out of your control, but you can give orders to them. It feels like it took influence from Final Fantasy XII and White Knight Chronicles, but it's also its own thing, so I had no issues with this battle system. The rest though, my expectations went down fast. Story, I didn't know these characters, so I didn't know what was going on. Even if I did, I wouldn't care since the writing was poor and unoriginal. Graphics on the PS4 probably look better since the ones on the Vita are really mediocre. Music is forgettable, I can't remember a single theme. And despite having good combat, the game's incredibly repetitive. Areas and dungeons are quite large, cryptic and full of enemy encounters. I did play another one on the Vita, which is a crossover with an anime called Axel World, and it's a better game, but it's also kinda boring. Not bad games here, but I just can't bring myself to care for them. Number 5, Vagrant Story. This game's really simple to explain. Great characters, great story, great lore, mature themes, dark themes, my kinda jam. But I hate the gameplay. It's more of a dungeon crawler than anything since you spend the entire game in the same place with bland graphics and boring area design. Some puzzles are there to keep you entertained, to spice things up maybe, but I also didn't like the combat. I had the exact same issue with Vandal Hearts 2. Everything's great except the battle system, but in here, the twist is different. I just don't see the appeal in targeting body parts to succeed. It may be awesome for some of you, but to me it's frustrating. Why can't I just beat the crap out of everybody, even with its grid system, to win? I like methodical RPGs like most of you, but not when they're action. I don't have the patience for something like this. This is also why I ditched the Front Mission series. Strategizing on which part to destroy first feels like a chore and a waste of time to me. I really wanted to like this game because, as I said at the beginning, it had everything I usually look for, but that's only in storytelling. If the gameplay isn't appealing to me, I'm not gonna play it. Besides, people convinced me this was a masterpiece that I desperately needed to try back then. All for it to become a great JRPG, sure, but that sadly failed my expectations. Number 4. The Caligula Effect. This is the game I mentioned before that also has music issues. I have to admit, I went almost blind into it. Many years ago I was trying to make hidden JRPG gems videos for the PS Vita, so I was looking for games to add to the lists. I came across this one and watched some gameplay and trailers of it. They were pretty good and appealing, so I knew that I had to try it out immediately. So unlike most JRPGs in this list, my high expectations were short-lived, perhaps only for a couple of hours until I waited the ROM to download. Instantly tried it out after installing, and the premise left me open-mouthed. Weird, bizarre, dark, I had no clue what it was about. Some high school turning students demented, your characters were the only ones able to see them and fight them. I don't know, it was eccentric to say the least, and I really liked that. But it all went to hell when I got full control of my character. The gameplay was bad. I was trapped in the school with zero clue what to do or where to go. I kept running around getting into random battles with a really convoluted battle system. It's in turns and it relies on skills and combination attacks, and I've no clue how to explain it, seriously. Most of the time I won for some reason, but that was it. I got nowhere after hours of gaming, just going back and forth between areas, backtracking a lot, fighting the same enemies, and listening to idle music over and over. Every damn time you get into battle, the singing starts and it doesn't stop until the end. The music, however, never stops no matter where you go, except when you watch some scenes, of course. This game is bad. It failed my expectations and I do not recommend it. I can't believe it got a PS4 and Switch port and now it's getting a PS5 port! It's like I'm the only guy on the planet that hates it! There's a sequel to it and it's a much better game in terms of exploration and combat, but the music situation is exactly the same, so beware. Number 3. Secret of Mana. I've been thinking about the Mana series lately and I can't believe that after all these years I still can't get into this one. It's an all-time classic, influential RPG, and I've known that since my younger days. So I went into it the first time with that in mind, hyped that I will finally play the legendary Secret of Mana. But it just didn't deliver. It failed my expectations. I think this is one of those cases when you need to keep your expectations to a minimum always, because when you expect the best of the best out of something, it usually disappoints. There's nothing wrong with Secret of Mana. Maybe the comedy is a bit dated, but it's far from bad. It's got a charming story, beautiful graphics, memorable music, fun exploration, and great pacing. Had I played this gem all the way back in the day, I'm convinced I would have appreciated it more. I would be a big fan of it, but it may be that it's one of those that I needed to play when young or when it came out. It's 2023 and I still can't properly explain why I never went back to it after a couple of tries on the SNES and one on its PS4 remake. I know the latter didn't get the best reviews, but I still thought it was decent, just not decent enough, not even the original version, to keep me immersed. It may have influenced many action RPGs out there, but today I see it simply as an okay game with generic writing, cliched story, and frustrating combat. Don't worry, I'm probably the only guy on Earth who feels that way about it. Number 2. Fairy Fencer 2. I have recommended the first game several times in the past. I'm a big fan of it despite its flaws. One of my favorite compile hard RPGs ever. but the sequel failed my expectations big time. Why? Because I freaking love strategy RPGs, right? So when I learned this will be one of them, I got really excited. Besides, I will have that funny and memorable cast of characters coming back for more. But once again, fighting the same enemies from the same organization in the same city with the exact same graphics and interface. Plus, new characters were added, sure, but none that really caught my interest. Some even made the story politicized with forced inclusion and boring dialogue. I'm not sure if I should blame the localization team for that. However, my biggest problem with this sequel was its pacing. It's not slow, don't worry, but it goes from stupidly easy to stupidly hard over time. After 20 hours into it, I realized I had reached a point of no return. I could barely grind since nearly every single side quest was low level, and the fairies you get as a reward for some of them were now completely useless. I had to grind even on easy mode a heck of a lot in the same area over and over again because it takes forever to level up here, and every single next main map had enemies that were 10 levels above every single character. I am fully convinced the testers of this game never made it this far, or perhaps that was the original intention of the developers, to make it stupidly unbalanced and annoyingly difficult. But hey, if you like huge, and I mean huge grind fests, this one might be right up your alley. Combat is also pretty darn fun, but fighting this girl over and over on every map, even optional, gets old real quick. Number 1. Fire Emblem Awakening. This game has fantastic gameplay, and it's the one true reason why I do recommend it. But it will surprise you to know that it's a JRPG that failed my expectations. Let me explain. I've been a fan of the series for a long time, so when I heard that it was in trouble of disappearing, that Nintendo had pretty much given a last chance to Intelligent Systems, the developers, I was very worried. Along came Awakening to save the franchise from doom, but the way it did it was questionable at best. The series had been known for having serious and more adult-oriented plots, but also since the very first one, with bonding scenes between characters and even marriage. Yes, that feature has been there since 1990. Nonetheless, the writing was different, very well crafted, and still somewhat mature. In Awakening, that changed poorly. It's like they hired different writers with fresh new ideas to ruin storytelling. Over-the-top fan service, over-the-top cliches, comedic dialogue that wasn't funny. Sure, I still loved some of it, and some characters like Henry and Tarja were among my favorites, but most of the others just had bad dialogue. However, the worst of it all was the plot itself. Why mix with fantasy the most overused science fiction element of all time, which is time travel, to ridicule the writing even more? The fact that you can have kids and meet them in an alternate future to recruit them fully grown is beyond laughable. I can't believe they thought this was a good idea for a Fire Emblem story. So, gameplay-wise, the game didn't disappoint, but story-wise, this was a massive, and I mean a massive fail at my overhyped expectations as a die-hard Fire Emblem fan. I honestly can't think of a better honorable mention than Natural Doctrine, the best example of a JRPG that failed my expectations, but you already know that. Anyway, what are your picks for this video? Let everybody else know. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!